if we can get ourselves back to a place where we are genuinely properly competitive across a whole wide range of circuits, and we're in in the championship battle, I know that the pleasure we will collectively feel will make all the last 3 years, the pain and the self-doubt and the self-loathing in some instances, will make all of that just go away like dew as the sun comes out.
Welcome everybody to this week's F1 Beyond the Grid. I'm delighted to say that we're joined by Mercedes Technical Director James Allison. James, great to have you on the show again. How are things?
Things are all right, thank you. It's a pleasure to be here.
Well, given the pace of the car in Canada, have we got you on the show at the start of what I'd like to call a Mercedes renaissance?
No, I think you've got us on the show 3 races into something that has been a progressively improving car. It just happens that we've put it on pole at this quite unusual track. But I think that the things that have given us that opportunity have been coming for a few races. They're just rather unheralded when you're close but no cigar.
There have been glimmers of hope all season, but the performance then falls away when it matters. So what has changed with the car?
Well, I think that the thing that has bedeviled us from the start of the year, the overriding thing, was that you could get the car okay in a slow corner, you get it quite decent in a fast corner, but you couldn't get it good in both at the same time. And what has changed in the last 2-3 races is that we've modified the car in such a way as it actually has a reasonable high to low speed balance and a reasonable through corner balance. Those are sort of boringy, jargony things that it just means that the driver can trust both the front and rear axle in a fast corner and a slow corner, and can trust it from when he hits the brakes at the beginning of the corner all the way through the apex and out the other side. That balance is crucial to a driver, that they know whether the car is going to understeer or oversteer and that it's going to follow the trajectory they're asking.
We're 2.5 years into these rule changes. So was it one eureka moment where someone came to you and said, James, this is what we need to do? Or was it more incremental gains?
I think eureka moments are ones where you joyfully understand something that I guess no one has understood before, and you've advanced knowledge in the process, and that's, I think, a very wonderful thing. This is more of a, oh God, how could we have been so dumb type moment where you see the path forward, and you should have seen it sooner.
This all is the front wing, is it, that George ran for the first time in Monaco?
Yeah, that's one of the bigger things about it, yeah. And it's all just trying to figure out how to get the car to go high and low speed in a good way, and to go through a corner in a good way. And a thing that we'd been fighting all year with springs and bars and all the mechanical accoutrements on the car, just attacking it with the aerodynamic characteristic of the car.
So, I mean, I'm quoting you now, but why had you been so dumb?
I think it's quite easy to get distracted by things that are side problems rather than the main problem, to allow yourself the indulgence that if we just sort out that little thing, then we'll be okay. And so we worked on things that did actually make the car better, but weren't the fundamental problem.
Does this raise the question about the budget cap, in that if there'd been no budget cap...
Can I interrupt you? No, it doesn't. No, it's not a budget cap thing.
But would you have got there faster without a budget cap?
No, I don't think so.
Okay, so
no, that's not a money problem.
So it's an ideas thing.
Yeah, it was just making sure, just ensuring that you're not just chasing downforce, say, but you're also got car handling high up enough in the priorities of what you're doing.
Well, George Russell, after his pole position in Canada, was saying, "We've found the path forward now." So, do you think you can be competitive at every racetrack going forward?
I think that we definitely can get the car this season to be properly competitive and to fear no tracks. I think that the specifics of this circuit maybe sort of might make our fans think prematurely that we're already there. This circuit has quite a low range of cornering speeds in it, and it tests the car maybe slightly less severely than some of the others that are coming up. And while I'm pretty sure that we will make a good showing in the nearby future races, I'd be surprised if we're on pole at the next one, for example. But I am absolutely certain that we can be as fast as anybody over the coming period.
Now, it's been a tough period to get to this point, and I'd like to quote Niki Lauda now, who has always said, "You learn more when you lose than when you win." Do you agree with him?
Yes, I do. I think on balance, it forces you to look under every rock when you've got the sting of defeat, and it's quite easy to misattribute your success to your collective skill and cleverness rather than good fortune, and defeat forces you to face all your weaknesses in a way that's very cathartic and painful, but ultimately very good for a team.
So if we were to extrapolate Niki's theory a bit further, have you been paying the price for all that success from 2014 to 2021?
I think in some ways, yes. In other ways, a little bit unlucky in places. But I think the most significant thing that I would say we could point inwards at ourselves and say as a criticism is that the way that we had found of working in the previous set of rules was very effective for the previous set of rules. And I don't just mean like, the way we'd shaped the front wing or the particular way that we handled the tyre squirt at the rear of the car. I mean that the way the key engineering groups interacted with one another in the team, so the aerodynamics with vehicle dynamics with the track, and track with both of those two groups. The way that we were set up in the old world worked just fine. And not just fine, it worked for 8 seasons on the trot, something no one has ever done before. It was pretty impressive. But we, to a large extent, carried on with that way of working together under different circumstances, and were insufficiently self-critical to recognise that there were weaknesses inherent in that approach in the new world that didn't matter in the old. And so, we definitely paid a price for that.
Why does the new world require a different way of working?
Mostly because the cars are all so uncomfortably near to the ground in this set of rules that suspension and aerodynamics have to be really, really, really tightly bound up with one another. And in the old world, they sort of were, they needed to be cousins, but they didn't need to be really, really properly embedded in each other's worlds. And actually, it would have been inefficient in the old world to spend time fretting about the interaction of one group on the other in a particularly intense way, because they were sort of orthogonal to each other to some extent. Now they are just completely in bed, and the interaction has to be very tight.
So without even knowing it, does complacency set in when you are dominating?
Yes, but I think you know that as well.
Know that at the time?
Yeah, we spent. I was lucky enough to join Mercedes in 2017, so 3 years, the third year there's of the dominance that subsequently unfolded, and I joined a team that was already very, very aware that it would be complacency that killed us. And everything we did over the time from when, from before I joined and thereafter, was trying to goad ourselves to remember that it would be complacency that got us, hubris that finished us, and very fearful that we would, lacking the sting of defeat, would not be turning over the rocks that would be necessary to stay strong. And I think it is massively to the credit of the team that for 8 years managed to keep that going, and successfully faced down enormous tranches of what complacency, that the manner in which complacency can kill you. I think you have to give huge credit to Toto for keeping the ship on an even keel across that period. It is really hard to keep a good team together, and jealousies arise, and frictions arise, and inter-Nissan sort of nastiness arise. That's nothing technical at all, but that normally kills a team long before they make a technical mistake. And that was a real strength in our team, and we were able to and still remains a real strength in our team. And we were able to sort of slay loads of the complacency dragons, but it's a tough sport, and you don't have to make many mistakes before they'll get you. And this one of not recognizing the interactions necessary between aero and suspension and track has had quite a big impact on us.
That blind spot you refer to, how much of a role did you stepping away for 2 years play in that? Because you became Chief Technical Officer from mid-21 to, mid-23, and that does coincide with the dip in form.
But I think coincidentally rather than causally. I think I probably it would have been much the same had I been in my old role during that time. And indeed, we managed to continue this mistake into the start of this year with me back in the role that I'd enjoyed previously. So I don't think it's that I would have made a substantial difference. I hope that having had whatever the opposite or the sort of shadow cousin of a eureka moment is, that I've been helpful in engaging the factory and all the folk who make this work to say, I know we've had lots of false starts, but believe me, this is worth a push. This will make a big difference. And the response of the factory to that has just been absolutely brilliant, and the relief in them at seeing that their efforts, which have been tremendous, their efforts are finally being rewarded by judgments that were actually correct, and the car responding that's been the happiest thing about the last 2-3 races. Is you had the moment where you go, oh God, and then or we collectively knew what to ask for, and then the factory could not have responded more magnificently to it.
So much was made over the last 2 years of the zero side pod concept.
Yeah.
If you'd put the front wing that you have now on that car or an iteration of it, would that car have worked?
Well, I wouldn't get too focused on the front wing. The front wing is part of an overall package, but the behaviour that we've managed to embed into the car over the last 2 or 3 races, of which the front wing is a component, has helped make us get a bit more on terms with the people that are doing a decent job. The whole hoopla about side pods is just flotsam and jetsam, really. It's the sport often focuses on what a car looks like, on what, whether it has X or Y thing on it, whether it's running high ride heights, low ride heights, and observers of the sport are utterly confused. Why would a team pig-headedly do something that's visually different when it's so obvious what the right thing to do is? And it's understandable that that's how they feel, and their confusion is understandable. But if a team is incorrectly placing value on stuff at the analytical level, then you will get the wrong geometry at the far side. And there's no point in putting someone else's geometry on the car, because your method of valuing it will immediately iterate you away from it back to what you previously valued. You have to understand what to value. And if you understand what to value, the geometry will pop out on its own. And the challenge is understanding what to place value on. Mm-hmm. And I think quite often in the sport you can be trundling along, having a lot of success, as we did previously, largely because we were placing value on the right things. But the fact that we were on that happy road, we might clap ourselves on the back and say how clever we were, but actually there's a certain amount of good fortune to it. And the cleverness was only on making sure we stayed on that road and adapted it left to right a little as the rules tweaked left or right a little over those years. And the cleverness too was trying to keep this team who had won so much operating with hunger to keep winning more. But the road that you were going down, the things we chose to value, that they were the correct ones, an amount of that is serendipity. Just as I would hold that when the torch passed to Red Bull at the changing of these regulations, they will rightfully deserve the success they've earned. But a certain amount of it will be that it will have come to them, that they will have found themselves on a good path under these new rules, and now they just need the wit to stay on it. Now, that might be doing them a disservice. Maybe they absolutely calculated everything utterly perfectly, and they did, and it's the result of their individual brilliance. But the experience of the last few years from my team would suggest that there is an amount of fortune and then a larger slice of merit based on your ability to stay on that path, however you arrived at it.
Selling a little or a lot? Shopify helps you do your thing however you ka-ching. Shopify is the global commerce platform that helps you sell at every stage of your business, whether you're just starting out, launching your first online shop, or close to hitting 1 million orders. Shopify's there to make your goals a reality. And Shopify knows that every business is different. It doesn't matter whether you're selling custom clothing or personalized prints. They help you sell everywhere with their all-in-one e-commerce platform and in-person POS system. You can even sell more with less effort thanks to Shopify Magic, your AI-powered all-star that can help you conjure up captivating content that converts, from blog posts to product descriptions, and it can even generate instant FAQ answers. And I love how empowering Shopify is for business owners, giving you total control over your brand by allowing you to customize your online store with their stunning flexible templates. It holds the record for the internet's best converting checkout, 36% better on average compared to other leading commerce platforms, helping you turn browsers into buyers like nobody else. In fact, Shopify powers 10% of all e-commerce in the US and is the global force behind Allbirds, Rothy's, and Brooklinen, and millions of other entrepreneurs of every size across 175 countries. And their award-winning help is there to support your success every step of the way. Because businesses that grow with Shopify. So don't miss out. Sign up for a $1 per month trial period at shopify.com/beyondthegrid, all lowercase. Go to shopify.com/beyondthegrid now to grow your business, no matter what stage you're in. Shopify.com/beyondthegrid.
James, you've won a lot in your career, obviously with Mercedes, but with 2 stints at Ferrari as well. Does the fortune thing carry to that previous success as well, when you were with Michael Schumacher, Ross Brawn, Rory Byrne?
I'll answer that at 2 levels. The fortune of winning a lot very much depends on the fortune of whether you have been lucky to be employed by a team that was in shape to win. You know, I got sacked from Benetton in 1999 and wound up at Ferrari largely because people at Benetton previously, who were then at Ferrari, remembered me as a sort of an okay person. And I then pitched up at Ferrari just at the beginning of their fabulous run of victories and rode along on the coattails of that. That's just pure fortune at a personal level. If you then sort of take a step back and say, was Ferrari's success utterly merited, or was there any good fortune in it? Well, we at the time had the deserved results of having employed the best driver of the day, Michael. The team had the best budget of the day because Jean had successfully argued for that from the higher-ups and on the Ferrari board. And we had a brilliant technical director who had the wisdom to sort of keep a strong team together. But there would have been elements of luck in what the team chose to place value on in wind tunnels and in suspension design. It's just they put some of the big fundamentals in place that improved their chances massively.
I'm sensing, talking to you, that what's happened in the last 3 races is a bit of a relief. Is that fair?
No, that's massively understating it. You know, we exist for one purpose, and that is to arrive at tracks with cars capable of competing not just for races but for championships, and we've fallen short of that. And you know, that's our entire professional purpose. You know, spend far more time at work than we do at home, and if the car is not where it should be, there's no one to blame except yourself. And so, you know, understanding and mending that as that starts to move in the right direction, there is enormous satisfaction and enormous relief. You know, because when things are not good in a team, when the car isn't good, whatever the strength and resilience of a team, but when the car isn't good, every single member of that team, to some degree or other, will have their entire life coloured by, you know, the position on a leaderboard of that carbon and titanium and aluminium thing, and it will determine whether you enjoy your holidays, how happy you are with your family, whether you sleep, how much food you eat. You know, it colours every aspect of your life, because you can't put it out of your mind until it's on a good path. And so it's far more than relief. It's just a completely inescapable part of your life that has to be good in order for things to be good.
So how tough has it been for you? The buck stops with you. So how tough has it been?
I don't want to over-exaggerate that, because toughness sort of implies that, you know, you're looking for sympathy or anything, which is not the case. It's a challenging job. It asks a lot of you. You definitely feel the weight of it, but there's an aspect of all of that challenge that I haven't described, which is you feel the privilege of it too.
Even when you're losing?
Especially when you're losing. And when you walk in the door in the morning and you know that you are playing a part in trying to make sure that all of us don't have all of those difficult feelings, but that we start to see how we can maneuver our way out of it. And the privilege of that is enormous. And so that is what actually makes the difficulty bearable. And then right in the very back of your head is the more than hope, but the certainty that if we act in the correct way together and we keep doing it for long enough, then we will be back on the top step of the podium, and all of this will be worthwhile. However sort of pathetic that sounds. Because, you know, at a sort of global level, if aliens were watching us, they say, well, why does it matter at all? But it does. And the payoff when you as a team, with all your colleagues who've felt all of those feelings, have managed to, by hook or by crook, you know, put to one side all the doubters who are slinging arrows at you from outside, and collectively worked studiously and with merit to bring it back to a good place, that final payoff does make it worthwhile. And actually the glory of the sport and the glory of being involved in it is that final payout is meaningful only because it's so bloody difficult, and because you have all of this passion behind it and all of this stress behind it and sometimes misery behind it. That has to be there for the prize to be worth it.
So that privilege that you've just described, is that the reason you wanted to come back as technical director?
It was a big part of it, yes. It is thrilling to feel properly embedded in a team. It's even more thrilling to be granted the honour of having a position of leadership in a team, and to know that when we collectively have taken the right moves, that you were there and standing up and being counted on the difficult sort of days that we've been talking about. That is very, very, very invigorating, and gives professional satisfaction in a way that I imagine would be very hard to find in most jobs.
How had the job of technical director changed in the 2 years that you'd been away?
Well, I don't think particularly fundamentally. We moved as a team from a phase of trying to just keep that unbroken run unbroken, to it being broken and being in a build back phase, and to be trying to give people the faith that this was going to come good, and therefore a much more sort of needing to find a sort of buoyant but realistic leadership style in a period where there'd be lots of reason to sort of think, well, do you know what, maybe it's time to leave this team and go somewhere else.
I'm probably putting 2 and 2 together and making 5, but that balance you've just talked about, the headlines of, you know, brain drains at Mercedes. Do you think other teams are paying people more than Mercedes? Is that a contributing factor to all of the staff movements that have gone on?
Well, I think that it probably pays to recognise what a sort of full frontal war Formula One is, and the war of trying to make your car competitive is fought on every front. And so it is convenient for certain teams who have brain drains of their own to put narratives in the press about the sort of misfortunes that others might be suffering. And actually our team is not particularly affected in a way that you might imagine if you were to read the motor racing press. We have people join, we have people leave, and there's a sort of equilibrium between that. If there weren't, our team would be just getting smaller. And we have lost some very good people, we've gained some very good people, and that 'twas ever thus in the sport. The stuff that you read in the press is ordinarily things that other teams are briefing to distract attention from themselves. And certainly I haven't felt in our team that we are suffering as a result of the sort of large-scale movement of talent. I've just felt the continuing, ongoing fight that you have in this sport for good people to be at your team and giving them reasons to want to be at your team.
James, tell us a little bit more about your relationship with Toto. How's it changed since 2017 when you joined?
Well, we didn't know one another when we started. We know one another very well now as a result of working together all that time. We've been through a massive amount together, and we know each other's strengths and each other's weaknesses. And I'd say that the thing that has, in good times or in bad, the thing that has made that relationship one that for me has been really a very enjoyable thing is that of the big bosses I've worked for, Toto is the one who has the self-confidence to cope with the fact that I'm quite outspoken. I don't worry about what the effect of what I'm saying will be on my career. I just try to say what I think's important, and that can be quite direct and difficult to hear sometimes. And Toto has been very, very generous in letting me say those things and being able to argue them out with me without getting bent out of shape over it. To just have the debate and reach a new point of where either we agree to disagree, or I may have moved him slightly, or I've been moved towards his position. But it's been a relationship that hasn't been blighted by him feeling like, oh, he's threatening me, or this is a challenge to my authority. As long as we do it sort of away from the public eye, this has been a brilliant thing about working for him.
What is the structure inside the team? Are you his 2IC, for want of a better description?
No, I don't think so. We have Toto is the team principal, CEO, managing director. The top dog in the team, unquestioned. He owns a third of it, and he runs all of it. But he has a management committee of extremely strong folk in the CFO, the COO, the chief people officer, the chief communications officer, and I'm one of that group. And we as a group hack around a load of stuff together in Toto's absence, and then we then discuss things in his presence, and I think Toto leans on that whole layer pretty equally, because all parts of that have to function for the team to function. It's just from the outside, people imagine teams are just engineering and drivers and the race team, but it's way broader than that, and you need a whole team of folk at the management level for a team to function well.
So it functions well, and was it a no-brainer for you to re-sign like you did last winter, or did you shop around a bit?
Not a no-brainer, because because you are choosing to when you choose to stay in the role that is as much fun as the one I enjoy, you are necessarily saying no to a whole heap of other stuff. You're saying no to being at home kicking around with family who you love. I'm lucky enough to have a granddaughter now and another grandchild on the way, and the decision to stay is necessarily a decision to spend less time with those people who you would dearly love to be around more. So it isn't a no-brainer, but on balance, it was something that I wanted to do, and I happily got the sort of assent of Chloe, my partner, and my children, that it was a worthwhile exchange.
Let's talk drivers now, if we could. George has out-qualified Lewis 8-1 so far this year. Okay, the gap between them is very small, rarely more than a tenth of a second. But does that stat surprise you?
Yeah, I wouldn't have predicted 8-1. And I think that for a chunk of the year, the car has been a pretty troubled beast. It's become a much better car in the last 2 or 3 races, and with that, I think the judgments about who may and may not put it in front of the other car become more meaningful, because the car is less of a random number generator. But yeah, Lewis has not by accident been the best qualifier in the history of the sport, because I think he's been the best driver in the sport. But he's struggling to make it stick this year by fine margins, as you say. And I think to a degree, I was speculating this in an email I sent to the factory yesterday, that the current car tyre combo, not just us, across the pit lane, doesn't like being hustled. You almost get the best lap times when you're not trying, and you see every weekend you'll see someone pop a lap time in free practice or in qualifying in some session or other. You'll see some car and you think, well, how did that get there? And then they don't do it again. It disappears in the mist straight after. And I think in qualifying it's quite hard to where you're all pumped up and you're wanting to get the best from it, to do a lap that is sort of relaxed enough to get the best out of the car.
Is that why you think neither driver improved on new tyres in Canada?
My opinion, yes. I mean, it may be that the track was a little worse at the end. We were running a little later than the others, but I think that, that last push, that sort of final heave, I don't think the car likes it.
But do you think George has taken a step up this year? Do you think he's reacted well to the news that Lewis Hamilton is leaving?
I think he's very, very consistent on getting the car at its best in qualifying trim, and he's really good at that. I think it's much more even in the race, and Lewis's race pace has been very strong relative to George on a number of occasions this year. But in qualifying, George has definitely had the better of it.
Lewis said in Monaco, didn't he, that he doesn't expect to out-qualify George for the rest of the year, I think he said. There are so many ways to interpret what he's just said. What's your take on it?
Well, I think if you just look at the stats, 8-1, then maybe, well, it was 7-1 back then, but maybe it would be reasonable to think if that trend continues, there won't be many times when he'll be on pole. I think that if you sort of try and read into that stuff that isn't there, like there's somehow he's got a systematic disadvantage on qualifying day, that's not true and not fair. The car is as so far as we can make it, the cars are identical. The engine use is identical. If the cars are different on setup, it's because that's what the driving engineering team on either side of the garage have iterated to, but they have the chance to have identical stuff if they chose. On one occasion this year, and famously in Monaco, they had a different front wing on the car because we only had one available, and we took the decision that we would get that wing on the car as soon as we could, and it had to go to one or other. And we had a conversation, and Lewis said, "No, let George have it." So, but equal.
But there's been
in every other respect.
James, there's been a recurring theme from Hamilton this year, saying that his feeling in the car goes away during qualifying.
Well, I think that if you come back to my emphasize that it's my hypothesis that the cars don't like being hustled, that they give you the best lap time when the driver is surprised by the lap time. And I think be interesting, you talk up and down the pit lane and see whether this is an experience elsewhere, but when the car is producing good laps, the drivers are almost like, I wasn't expecting that. It just, I was almost cruising. And when it's qualifying and it's sort of the pressure's on and it's time to deliver, I don't think those are the circumstances that get the best from quite fussy tyres.
Talking of surprises, how surprised were you when you heard that Lewis wanted to leave the team?
Not massively. I was surprised at the manner in which it happened, the timing of it, but I was aware of the nature of the contract we'd offered, and the nature of the contract we'd offered permitted that to happen. So if it then happened, we shouldn't be surprised, because that was explicitly a thing we were happy, or not happy, it was a thing that we were prepared to happen, or else we wouldn't have put it as an option in the contract. So the precise timing and sequencing of when it happened, that I think caught everyone a bit on the hop. But that it did happen, I don't think was unpredictable.
What will you miss about him?
I mean, just the days where he would just produce total magic that would make you go, oh my goodness. Putting a car on a road that with such precision that just left all the other drivers around him with no option but to sort of surrender to what Lewis was doing on the road. The ability to make a tyre last and last and last, even while telling Bono it wouldn't. All that.
He does a lot of that.
Yeah. The drama that goes along with having him as a teammate, but the delivery of brilliant performance. I've said before, I think he's the best racing car driver there's ever been, and I still believe it. And
And that's coming from a man who's worked with Michael Schumacher.
Yeah, another utterly remarkable person, and it's a parlour game that we can all indulge in endlessly without resolution. But if I, gun against the head, had to choose the best person, I would pick Lewis.
Now, you've worked at Ferrari on 2 occasions. What's Lewis got waiting for him there?
Well, he'll get a sense of the spirit and passion of that team. Those are overused cliches.
But do you think he'll react well to that?
I think initially, I think it might get tricky. At Ferrari, the Ferrari is the star, and I think every driver who's driven there at some level or other has had to come to terms with that. If Lewis actually embraces that and loves it in the way that Michael did, then there's space for both to be great. If he doesn't, then I think the brand and the Ferrari will always dominate.
Now, Toto said in Canada that Kimi Antonelli is the team's future. Just wanted to ask you about him, how you feel Kimi's developing.
Well, I'm probably a bit disappointing as a person to answer that question because I don't have much to do with it. I work on the car, and the driving side of it is dealt with by other people. So Toto and Gwen and some of the folk in the race team who look after looking at him and watching what he does. Is much more peripheral to the things that I spend my days doing. However, I can't ignore the fact that he's in our TPC car, the 2022 car, running tests in the car to sort of get himself familiarised with it, and he's pretty bloody good. So it's a nice sort of background feeling for me as I worry about the here and now, which is making the car work, to think that we've got this burgeoning young talent who is gathering his strength and who's headed our way at some point.
He's only 18. Oh, he's going to be 18 at the end of August. He's only 17 at the minute. How big an ask is it to put a guy that young, that raw, in a front-running Formula One team?
I think it is a huge ask, but I think that if the talent is there, it won't matter. When Lewis was first put in a Formula One car, I think a lot of people would have said that's a huge ask, straight from GP2, I think.
But he was older, he'd had more experience in the junior formulas.
Yes, but whenever a rookie comes into Formula One, that is a huge ask. And yes, he will be young, and yes, that will put a load of pressures on his young shoulders. But if you look at Ollie Beerman's debut in Saudi, that is a difficult circuit, and he was in that car last minute, and look at the way he performed, the maturity with which he performed. If the driver has the temperament and the skill, they will step up to that ask, and all things point towards Kimi having those things. So yeah, huge ask, but if the talent's there, he will answer it in a way that will make everyone go, blimey.
He'll obviously get the current car initially if the deal happens, but then of course we go into 2026. His sophomore season will be with the new regulations. Let's talk about the power unit, everything that's going on at Brixworth. Are you in good shape?
We won't know until we know when we line up against everyone else. I'm lucky enough to be in meetings with Howell and his top guys at HPP, and they're kind enough to share the sort of scope of their ambition and the progress they're making with that car, with that engine, I should say, the power unit. They know that 2026 for the power unit is like it was for 2014. They know it will set the fate of the team in large measure for some years to come, and they're all in on making it a success. They put some very, very bold targets down, and they seem to be on track to making them happen. It's really invigorating watching them do it, but our role in it is more to try and say how it will hook up to the chassis and what part we can play in trying to make it package nicely and organise its cooling and stuff like that. But the work is all in the main work is happening in HPP.
Right. Well, James, it's been brilliant to have you back on the pod. Thank you. It seems you've got a lot going on. When Mercedes are winning again regularly, will that be the peak of your career?
Well, it's certainly been massively enjoyable, but I wouldn't really think of it in those terms. If we can get ourselves back to a place where we are genuinely properly competitive across a whole wide range of circuits, and we're in the championship battle, I know that the pleasure we will collectively feel will make all the last 3 years, the pain and the self-doubt and the self-loathing in some instances, will make all of that just go away like dew as the sun comes out. And that's what I think about. I don't think about it in terms of my career. I just think about the pleasure, holding that in my head, the pleasure we're going to collectively feel as a group when we get there.
James, good luck. If I could just end with what is now a regular on the show. Didn't do it last time you were on, but our quick fire questions. What else are you good at?
I'm sort of adequately competent across a wide range of things and not particularly good at anything.
Passionate about flying, aren't you?
I like flying little planes. I like making stuff out of wood. I hope I'm an adequate dad, that sort of stuff.
Which racing person, dead or alive, would you like to be stuck in a lift with?
Bob Bell.
Why Bob?
Because I really, really like him.
You've worked with him in the past,
yeah.
haven't you? And between the two of you, you'd fix the lift, wouldn't you? James, who would play you in a film?
Some sort of anteater.
Who is the coolest person in your address book?
I don't have a very show busy life, so I'm just going to default to my family that they're head and shoulders more important to me than anything else, and I love and admire them massively, and I think they are cool as anything.
All right, final one. If you had a podcast like this, who would be your first guest?
That feels so hypothetical because I cannot possibly imagine that I would ever want to make a podcast or subject to answering my questions. I have no idea.
You and Toto, I'd love to hear that.
Well, just come down to our garage and see us talking. You'll see how Toto and I interact, and it is a fun thing because he makes me laugh, and he's good fun to be around.
James, thank you very much. Thank you.